China is on the war path. More trouble for Chinese billionaire Jack Ma, and Chinese nationalists don't like it when you criticize Xi Jinping. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. You probably know that companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens, maybe hundreds, most of which you've never heard of. And you have no idea what they're doing with your data. Incogni helps you stop them. I'll explain more at the end. So, China just sent an aircraft carrier group through waters near Taiwan and southern Japan. Both Japan and Taiwan's militaries were put on high alert. The statement by Japan's self-defense force shows the path the Chinese carrier group took through the first island chain and into the Pacific. It was led by China's first and mostly functional aircraft carrier, the Liaoning. With it were 7 other Chinese warships. You can also see the Liaoning was loaded with a number of fighter jets and helicopters. Those were J-15 fighter jets and Z-8 and Z-9 helicopters. Chinese state-run media said the carrier group was engaged in realistic combat training. This is particularly bad news for Taiwan. The Taiwanese Navy is completely outmatched. One expert told Radio Free Asia last year, for example, China commissioned some combined 170,000 tonnage of new warships. This is more than the combined Taiwan fleet and reflects Chinese additions in just 1 year. The Chinese Communist Party is making its intentions perfectly clear. It wants to conquer Taiwan. That's the key to Chinese military domination of the region. Happy Friday. China's threat to Taiwan is why the U.S. must end its policy of strategic ambiguity. That's according to former Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy, Seth Cropsey. Strategic ambiguity is a policy where the U.S. won't say whether or not it will defend Taiwan. It's like telling a middle school bully, "Don't pick on that kid, or you may or may not get detention. We'll have to see." And for some reason, Cropsey says that's unhelpful. It doesn't deter China, it risks the safety of Taiwan, and I think it would be a good idea if the United States were to rethink that. He cited how the same policy towards Ukraine didn't deter Russia from invading. Yeah, but maybe if we just try it again, it'll work this time. Part of the U.S.'s plan to counter China in the Pacific revolves around getting more involved in the Pacific Island nations. President Biden will invite the leaders of Pacific Island nations to visit the White House later this year, which is good because the Chinese Communist Party has been making inroads in these nations for a while now. For instance, Beijing is helping expand the Solomon Islands' biggest hospital. Pacific Island nations like the Solomon Islands are in need of infrastructure investment. Largely, China has been the one providing that. That's how China was able to sign a security deal with the Solomon Islands, one that could lead to a Chinese military base in the South Pacific. The Chinese Communist Party is clearly laying the groundwork for a war in the Pacific. And according to Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall, China is studying how the U.S. fights in order to defeat it.
China has ambitions to be the great power on the face of the earth. They have ambitions to be the global great power. And it was quite clear that their desire was to deny us the ability to project power in the Western Pacific. So I'm much more concerned about China than about Russia.
To that end, recently Kendall issued this joint statement with generals from the Space Force, warning of China's space warfare capabilities. In addition to developing the ability to attack in space, China has integrated space capabilities into its military operations in order to target maritime, air, and land forces and project power through space. For instance, if China is able to cut off American satellites, the U.S. Navy operating in the Pacific could have its communications and computer systems crippled. Now, a common problem in the U.S. has been people simply not taking the Chinese Communist Party at its word. Party officials have been very open about their goals, but it's always written off. That's not a mistake Kendall is going to make.
I made the mistake a few times during the Cold War of not believing what the Soviets were saying. Turns out that they meant what they were saying. I think the same can be assumed of the Chinese right now.
And coming up after the break, how a mistaken identity caused Alibaba stock to plummet by $26 billion. Welcome back. Jack Ma, one of China's richest men and founder of Alibaba, has had a hard time lately. Back in 2020, he criticized Chinese financial regulators, then he disappeared for 3 months. That was just the beginning, though. The Chinese Communist Party launched what it called an anti-monopoly crackdown and fined Alibaba as well as other Chinese tech companies. But it didn't stop there. Earlier this year, a probe into Jack Ma's empire led to a $100 billion loss for 3 of China's biggest companies in just a matter of days. Alibaba was one of the companies hit. And now, this. Chinese state media reported that an individual surnamed Ma in the city of Hangzhou, where Alibaba is based, had been detained on national security grounds. According to Chinese state-run CCTV, the man was charged with colluding with overseas anti-China hostile forces to incite secession and incite subversion of state power. Within minutes of the announcement, Alibaba's stock tanked, wiping $26 billion from the company's market value. Then Hu Xijin, the former editor-in-chief of my favorite Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, pointed out the guy who was arrested was not Jack Ma, but simply another guy with the same last name. Alibaba stock quickly recovered. This shows just how much power the Chinese Communist Party has over business in China. An expert speaking to CNN said the ordeal demonstrated the government does not even have to arrest a senior technology executive to erase tens of billions of dollars from a company's market valuation. It just needs to release some kind of information. Right? Because China's communist system is so opaque that when the authorities announce that they've arrested someone named Ma, people just assume it's Jack Ma, because that could totally happen. This is not the kind of place people should be investing in. And yet, Wall Street banks continue to double down on China. I mean, hey, it's your money. And by your money, I mean our money. This week, Chinese leader Xi Jinping chaired a meeting on China's zero-COVID policy, and surprise, the Chinese Communist Party is sticking with their zero-COVID policy. Despite the fact that it's destroying China's economy, causing massive suffering, and making people so fed up, they're actually protesting. Nope, according to the Chinese regime, China's current COVID-19 control strategy has been proven to be scientific and effective, and should be unwaveringly adhered to. And they will fight anyone who says otherwise. No, seriously, they will fight any attempts to distort, question, or dismiss China's anti-COVID policy. So suck it up, Shanghai. Speaking of Shanghai, the city has been in lockdown since the end of March. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. According to Chinese state-run media, Shanghai is going to lift their lockdown by the end of May. More likely than not. Probably. Possibly. And coming up after the break, apparently criticizing Xi Jinping can get you assaulted in Australia. Welcome back. China's COVID propaganda really isn't working anymore. State-run Xinhua ran this story about officials using drones to deliver cancer medicine to a patient 20 kilometers away. It was meant to show that communist officials will go to extreme lengths to help the people. Except Chinese internet users mocked it. After all, Shanghai is under lockdown. People said they could have just delivered the medicine by car. Since the streets are empty, ouch. There's been a big surge in this kind of feel-good COVID propaganda. But as people starve in their apartments because of botched communist policies, the response to uplifting COVID news has been, we're not that dumb. This is like back in 2020, when state-run media pushed a video of nurses crying as their heads were shaved. It was supposed to be a moving tribute to their dedication to fight the virus. Until people started asking, why did they have to shave their heads? Why didn't men have to shave their heads too? Isn't this just stupid? You may remember a few years ago we had Australian student Drew Pavlou on the show. He was expelled from the University of Queensland for criticizing the Chinese Communist Party. Well, since then he's gotten into politics and is running for office. Recently he held an event where he held a sign saying, F Xi Jinping. Then this happened.
You motherfucker! Son of the what do you want here? Why did you call?
According to Drew, after the incident, the New South Wales police said he would be charged for holding the sign and wouldn't say if the men who assaulted him were going to be charged. He later tweeted, I should be able to insult a dictator like Xi Jinping in my own country without being physically assaulted and attacked. Australia is a democracy and we should be free to insult any leader, no matter how coarsely. This is a simple principle of free speech. I mean, sure, we should all have free speech, but not if we're going to use it to criticize a dictator. The Australian elections are coming up on May 21st, and we plan to have Drew on the China Unscripted podcast before it happens, so stay tuned for that. Over in Hong Kong, a student has been sentenced to 5 years in jail under the national security law. But he's already spent 19 months in detention. He was arrested in September 2020 when police seized a pepper ball gun, an extendable baton, and other weapons used by demonstrators during the 2019 protests over a controversial extradition bill. He pleaded guilty to selling these types of weapons on Telegram and posting pro-independence messages. And press freedom is almost dead in Hong Kong. That's according to this new report by Hong Kong Watch. Since the national security law began, almost all independent and pro-democracy media outlets have been forced to close. 18 journalists have been arrested, and at least 12 journalists and media executives are currently in jail awaiting trial. It also mentions a survey of journalists who covered the 2019 protests. Of the over 200 journalists who responded, only 28 said they had not experienced police violence. One journalist summed it up to Hong Kong Watch, saying, "The hatred that the police showed against the media was shocking. I was there. I should know." And YouTube basically demonetized all our episodes while we were there. Fortunately, we can keep making the show thanks to the support of viewers like you and our wonderful sponsors. Speaking of, this episode has been sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online, there's a huge number of companies that collect your personal data. Your name, your email, your home address, your social security number, your employment history, all sorts of things. What are they doing with your data? Well, they're buying it, selling it, and trading it to other companies. Some of them are using it to sell you products. Others use it to adjust your credit score or to help the government monitor you. And if any of those companies get hacked, you could be in big trouble. Like in 2013, hackers got into Yahoo and exposed personal information on 3 billion users. You never know when this kind of data breach is going to happen, and when it does, you don't want your personal information to be there. When I signed up for Incogni, I discovered there were 76 data brokers that potentially had my private information. I'd never heard of most of these companies, but they had definitely heard of me. Incogni forces these companies to delete your data. There are laws that allow you to do this, but if you want to do it yourself, you'd have to figure out the applicable laws, write letters in a specific legal way, and follow up to make sure your instructions are followed. Incogni handles this for you. Just a couple of months after signing up, Incogni had already gotten my details removed from 18 of these data brokers, with 36 more in progress. And I didn't have to do anything after signing up. So check out Incogni using the link below, or go to incogni.com/uncensored. The first 100 people to use the code uncensored will get 20% off. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.